Welcome to the Deep Wealth Podcast, where you learn how to extract your business and personal deep wealth. I'm your host, Jeffrey Feldberg. This podcast is brought to you by Deep Wealth and the 90-Day Deep Wealth Experience. When it comes to your business deep wealth, your exit or liquidity event is the most important financial decision of your life. But unfortunately, up to 90% of liquidity events fail. Think about all that time and your hard-earned money wasted. Of the quote-unquote successful liquidity events, most business owners leave 50% to over 100% of the deal value in the buyer's pocket and don't even know it. I should know. I said no to a seven-figure offer and yes to mastering the art and the science of a liquidity event. 2 years later, I said yes to a different buyer with a 9-figure deal. Are you thinking about an exit or liquidity event? Don't become a statistic and make the fatal mistake of believing the skills that built your business are the same ones to sell it. After all, how can you master something you've never done before? Let the 90-Day Deep Wealth Experience and the 9-step roadmap of preparation help you capture the best deal instead of any deal. At the end of this episode, take a moment and hear from business owners like you who went through the Deep Wealth Experience. Patrick Cummings is an entrepreneur, business coach, wealth management advisor, and published author committed to helping others balance their lives for happier outcomes. He worked in the corporate world for 12 years before deciding when his children were toddlers to start his own business and gain control of his time. An active member of his community, Patrick lives in Washington State with his wife, Brooke. Welcome to the Deep Wealth Podcast, and I have a fellow business owner, author, thought leader, and all-around terrific guy with us. We're going to give you a different perspective coming out of this episode, that I promise you. So hang on to your seats. You're in for a heck of a ride, but all good things. Patrick, welcome to the Deep Wealth Podcast. And you know, Patrick, there's always a story behind the story. And actually, you have an interesting story. So what's your story, Patrick? What got you to where you are today? What's going on with that?
Well, my story, I'll keep it as short as I can, but I was raised by a single mom. My dad left when I was 5. My brother moved away to be with my dad when I was 9. My mom was a school teacher. And as a school teacher, you don't make a lot of money. And it was a tough time. I didn't have my brother, didn't have my dad. And I probably had too many males in my life from high school and different things that were probably not a good influence. So growing up, didn't know I didn't have anything. Started working at a very young age, mowing neighbors' lawns, things like that, just to help my mom. And certainly miss my dad. I would see my dad every other week for a day, day and a half. Typically was always at work for him. He was a school administrator, athletic director, so he was always working. My mom remarried a wonderful man when I was 18. They're still married today. My mom's 85. He's 89, doing well. But he went through a terrible financial situation where he ran a company and had a hostile takeover. And he didn't even know that the business was for sale. He owned 48% of it. And 2 years after the business sale, the bank walked in and shut the place down. And that's how his kind of career ended. And so I had this desire to be able to help my mom and my stepdad. But at the same time, my dad was still alive. I got into the corporate world and realized very quickly that I didn't want to be a corporate pawn. And what I mean by that is they would pick you up on Sunday and move you on Tuesday and your family would follow and you do whatever they tell you to do. And I did that for 11 years. When my daughter was healthy, born, I decided to make a change. And late 1999, got into the investment business. And when I did that, I found myself doing a lot of the same things my dad did. And I was working way too much. And my kids had come to work with me at some points in time, and I was working at night and caused a lot of problems. And I just realized as they were getting into elementary school that I didn't want to continue that. And as I talk about in my book, I just got a lot of things wrong when I became my own boss. And I just decided that there's so many men that I've met that say they want to be an entrepreneur. They want to be an entrepreneur for time freedom, but they work way more than they ever would work if they work for somebody else. They're not putting their family first. They say they are, but they're not. And the other part is men typically aren't vulnerable. And I am pretty vulnerable in my book.
Well, let's talk about that. We'll talk about the book. And for all of our
Mhm.
female listeners out there, if you're saying, hey, you know what? I think I'm going to tune out here. This is just for all the dudes out there. I'd say think again. You all have men in your life. And why not be the light in the darkness for these men in your life that you can give them some counsel and some advice. Maybe they can even go and pick up the book. And speaking of the book, it's the most important business that any of us have if we're really open and honest about it. The family business. That's the title of the book. The family business, balancing act, an entrepreneur's guide to being a family man. And Patrick, just before we jump into it, a quick
Mhm.
story for you. I've been very fortunate. I have met incredibly successful entrepreneurs, founders, business owners, you name it. And when they get real, and we get real in all my conversations, the one common theme that I hear from them is, Jeffrey, it's great that I have all the material trappings and the financial success. But when I look back, it was a huge sacrifice. I don't have many regrets, they say, but one of the regrets is whether it was their immediate family or the parents, brothers, sisters, I didn't have the relationship, or I missed family events. And so there's always moderation, there's always balance for the listeners out there. We're going to be talking about that today. And here are some guideposts for you to follow through. Big picture wise, Patrick, when all is
Mhm.
said and done, what would you want the listeners to know once they've read your book? They've read the book, they loved it, they're walking away from it. What would be, big picture wise, and then we'll go into the details, one or two strategies that they can
Yeah.
anticipate walking away with?
Yeah, I would say one of the biggest things is, and I've been challenged with this in the past, is I hear a great idea, I write it
Mm-hmm.
down somewhere, I get back busy in my everyday life, and I forget about it. And I
Sure.
think the takeaway here is number one, it's about making a little bit of progress. It's not about being a perfect dad or a perfect
Mm-hmm.
mom or a perfect spouse, but it's about making a little bit of a move in the right direction if it truly is important. We all keep a time system, we all have
Sure.
calendars, we all have
Mm-hmm.
reminders on our phone. Just put a reminder in there that family first, or you wear a bracelet. I
Mm-hmm.
wear a bracelet that my son made me. It's just a little tiny thing that
Uh-huh.
reminds me of him, and take
Mm-hmm.
that step back. And I'm doing this for my family.
Some great advice. Just keep it front and center. And as business owners, we do this all the time in the business. If something's important, what do? We schedule it in. Why? Because we want to make sure
Right.
we're not distracted. Well, family, same kind of thing. Great strategy
Well,
that you're suggesting.
yeah, and the one thing that my wife and I've been doing now for over 10 years, probably
Mm-hmm.
12 years,
Mm-hmm.
is she is on my calendar every
Mm-hmm.
Thursday
Uh-huh.
for an hour and a half for lunch.
I love it.
And I'm not allowed, and it's by my choice, I'm not
Uh-huh.
allowed to take my phone.
I love that. Great strategy. And you know what? I'm all about rituals, rituals which form our days, which turn into weeks, months, quarters, years, decades,
Yeah.
and beyond. And it all starts with a single act on
Yeah.
any given day. And so, Patrick, let's set this up. There's three parts to your book. I really like how you organize it. Part number one, dad challenges. So set this up for us in terms of, okay, what's going on out there for us dads that are looking to make a living, support the family? What are you seeing, Patrick? Maybe the obvious and the not so obvious. What should we know
Yeah.
about this?
Well, for me, we're all raised differently. My wife was raised in a family where it was very dictatorial. You're going to do what dad says. It's
Right.
best to be seen and not heard. And if you're
Mm-hmm.
heard, that's probably not a good thing. I
Mm-hmm.
was raised by a mom who was very loving and outgoing and embracing. And so when you come together, I'd come home oftentimes and there's a fight between them and I'm in the middle. You do what you're modeled. What did my
Mm-hmm.
dad do? My dad was the provider. He worked all the time. And so that's probably the biggest challenge I talk with a lot of young men about,
Mm-hmm.
young families about, is they were raised different. They don't discipline the same. And how do you want to be the bad guy either? So that's one of the biggest challenges I think that we face.
We're going to get into this in terms of the remedies, the prescriptions of what we can do. But that's a terrific setup in terms of what's there. We're talking offline very briefly about this, Patrick, and you can tell me if you think I'm way off base or if there's something to it. The pandemic, and as I like to say, our
Mhm.
hearts go out to all the people who suffered. Some people lost loved ones, friends,
Sure.
relatives, tragic. At the same time, though, on the flip side, there's always two sides to a coin. And one of the things that the pandemic brought out for people's awareness is the importance of family family time, having a family life. And hopefully it's starting to make it easier in the workplace in terms of taking some of the time off, having that lifestyle that really supports that. So let's go into some of the strategies that you're talking about. So in part 2, making time for what matters. Right off the bat, and I'll throw this out there, would love to get your insight. It's taking yourself off default. And for the listeners, again, we're going to have a link in the show notes. I encourage you to click on the link, get the book. This will be a nice prelude for you. But what's going on with that? Taking yourself off default, Patrick, what do you want our listeners to know for that?
Well, taking yourself off default is talk about the fact that we're creatures of habit. And it's very difficult to break those habits. My dad would come home from work. When I saw him, he would sit down. He would take the newspaper, throw it up above his face, and don't bother me because I'm reading the newspaper. How many times do we come home and we flip open our device, iPad, iPhone, whatever device you're using, to do a mental download? We do that. And sometimes we need to do it, at the end of the day, middle of the day. My wife does it after a really rough day in the veterinary office. But you got to recognize that you got to take yourself off of whatever you're defaulting to and slowly make some changes there. Maybe you come home and you've had a brutal day and you just don't have anything left. It's okay to talk to your family about it.
Right.
It's okay to say, hey, I'm not uptight with you guys. I had a really rough day. This is what occurred. Let me have a few minutes to myself to decompress, download, do whatever, but then switch it up. Don't turn on Monday Night Football and sit there and do that. What are your kids doing? What is your wife doing? And my daughter, like a lot of little girls, loved horses. So we had a couple of horses. And so I did not like taking care of the horses, but I was involved in that. And so I would make sure that I was taking special time with her to do that. My son was into anything with wheels and motors, and we'd buy engines that didn't work and we'd tear them apart. And I have a degree in economics. I work in the financial world. I'm not a good mechanic, but taking the time to show them that their interests truly matter. And doing the same thing for your significant other. My wife is very creative, very artsy. We'll sit down and we'll do glass work together and we'll do glass fusing. And so what I mean by taking yourself off default is, number one, recognizing what is my habit that I want to break. Just again, oftentimes we place in front of ourselves this false horizon that we have to get it perfect. I'll tell you what, we broke a lot of bolts and we broke wrenches and bloody fingers working on these car parts. It was that time of me showing my son that I was truly interested in what he was doing. And now today, he works for Arrow McLaren IndyCar.
Wow.
Just being involved in what they're doing, show them that you care. How often? I mean, it's embarrassing to bring this up, but how often do you go out to dinner and you look around the restaurant and you see everybody at the table with their device and they're not paying attention to one another? And I think we've really gotten away from that over the last several years. The pandemic made some of those things worse. It made working from home, I think, compounded some of that problem because you couldn't get away from it. Again, what is it that you want to make a little bit of a difference? And ask your family for their input.
Yeah, some good advice, Patrick. And what I like with what you did of making the time for what matters, so that's really the outcome, what we want to get, and taking yourself off default, then the next 3 chapters for me really brought it home, because one of the strategies you're saying is, and it's really mindset, and it goes into rituals. Who's your most important client? I think if we asked 100 business owners, I don't know if any one of them would say my family, but you bring it right up front and center. Make sure that your most important client in how you spend your time, how you look at things, is your family. And what a beautiful way to do that. Just a gift in changing the mindset. And then from there, you're also sharing, hey, learn to step away and then make the most of your time. And Patrick, what you said earlier, it's such a gift, because I know for a lot of parents, and we've all been there, our children have activities and, oh gosh, I got to drive through traffic. I got to go there. I could be doing other things. But what if, instead of having a business call with your kids in the car, instead of listening to the radio, we change it up? Hey, I have uninterrupted time with my children or with my spouse, my significant other, with my family. How do we make the most of it? As I like to say, magic moments, and really take what could be the boring, the mundane, and turn it into memories and magical times in terms of what we can do. Yeah. So some terrific strategies that you're putting out there for us. And then You give us a foundation in parts 1 and 2, and then in part 3, you start giving us the strategies. I mean, ultimately, as you say, building better relationships. And there's a number of strategies that you put out there. Is there a favorite one that you have that you want to jump into for our listeners of those strategies?
Oh boy, there's so many that pop into my brain. I mean, the
Mm-hmm.
first thing that pops into my brain was pray before entering. And what I did there was I was showing up at home, and a lot of times that conflict was there. And I would sometimes come into the house and be angry. And I hung a little note off
Mm-hmm.
my garage door opener that said pray before entering, just for me to pull it back and be grounded again. Okay, what am I doing? I'm walking into my house. I'm going to be a dad. I'm going to be a
Mm-hmm.
professional father. That part was very important. Not backing down on things that you said you were going to do. You know, how many times have we said, well, I'll do this tomorrow, or we'll get to that the next time. And I really gotta take this. And then, your family starts to say, well, there's an unkept promise. So if you're doing that, we need to stop. But, ultimately to lead up to all of this,
Mm-hmm.
is you have to recognize that we only have so much emotional energy per day. Unfortunately, we can't look at the computer and say, oh, I'm getting down to a quarter of a tank. We have to figure that out.
Uh-huh.
And if this is important, how much emotional energy do you want to retain so that you have that left when you get home?
Exactly.
How do we retain some of that? And so again, maybe you got to put it on your calendar, energy level. I've canceled meetings. I've canceled half of a day because of what occurred that morning. I wasn't going to be in a good mindset, number one, at work, but I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
going to be a good mindset when I was at home. And
Uh-huh.
just recognizing that. Also recognizing that next week doesn't have to be your best week ever, because we only have a short amount of time with our kids.
And Patrick, as you're going through this and you started to cover some of it, and it got me thinking, there's listeners out there who are hearing both of us talk, and to be a little bit on the cynical side, don't hold it against me. I'm just going to throw it out there. I'm sure some
Yeah.
people may be saying this to themselves. Okay, yeah, Patrick, you have a great story. Good for you. And Jeffrey, sure, nice book that's there and everything else. But you don't know my life. I'm busy. I don't have enough hours in the day. I'm actually building the business for the family, so I can provide, so we can have a terrific life, so we can have financial stability and ultimately financial freedom. All the things that we talk about in Deep Wealth and a 9-step roadmap, but that's another conversation. But to get there, gentlemen, to get there, I just don't have the energy or the time that you're suggesting to be able to do it. I mean, if I have time in the schedule, I want to get another client, I want to grow the business. So, Patrick, I'm not saying that's right, and there's no judgment whatsoever against that. A lot of listeners find themselves in that situation. So, what did you do, and how do we talk them off the cliff for
Yeah.
someone who's having that kind of mindset?
Well, I mean, early on, obviously, if you're not paying the bills, you're not going to be able to open the door to go into your business. So
Uh-huh.
there is a level that you have to reach. You have to be able to pay your bills and your staff, or whatever the situation is. Everything comes at a cost. How much do we have to have at the beginning of the month to survive the month? We never sat down and talked about how much time is it going to take me to do that? Because when you're first building the business, there is no revenue, there's no income. And so I get that.
Sure.
The challenge is expenses expand to eat up available income. Work expands to eat up available time. Expenses will expand to eat up available income. What level do we really need to be at? This young guy that I was talking to the other day said, if I don't do $300,000 of income this year, I'm a failure. I said, what? Who put that on you? We live in Eastern Washington. You make $300,000, you're at the top 1% income
Mm-hmm.
earners. So
Mm-hmm.
who's setting that bar? And I think setting a realistic expectation, because when I first started, I
Mm-hmm.
was knocking on doors 6 days a week. I mean, literally knocking on doors to introduce myself to try and get clientele. I had to do that to survive. But there at some point, number one, you can't do that forever, because if you do, you're going to live a lonely life. Maybe it is you say, okay, 1 day a week, I'm shutting it off, and you're not checking emails and voicemails and things like that. Balance doesn't mean I'm going to spend 50% of my energy here and 50% of my energy here. You can't
Sure.
do that running a business. Even if you can give them one day, one
Sure.
night where everybody sits down at the dinner table
Mm-hmm.
and you're having a conversation about what's going on at school, what's going on in their lives, and you spending that time with them that maybe you weren't. My dad worked 6 days a week. I don't recall him ever asking me really how I was doing when I was
Right.
growing up. And so,
That's your chapter 8. Take an interest and having some love and respect. And Patrick, with what you're sharing with us, and for our listeners out there, if what Patrick is saying is resonating and you're saying, hey, yeah, that's me, well, maybe life is talking to you and you're not listening. Because if you're spending all the time in the business, and sure, startup mode is startup mode, we get that. And getting a
Yeah.
business established, I get that as well. But if it's like that 24/7, year over year, something's wrong. Something's not right. And it's time to take a step back and make an adjustment. I've yet to meet a successful person who later on in life said, geez, I wish I would have had more business meetings, or I wish I would have had more hours in the office. It's usually, gosh, I wish I would have had more outings with my significant other or with my children.
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about. So if your future self, really what we're saying here is if your future self can come back to present day, do this for your future self, to have your future self thank you. Thank you for giving me such an amazing future with loved ones and memories and family around me. So taking an interest, Patrick, you're sharing that. You didn't necessarily have that growing up. And it sounds like you've made that course correction with your family and others in your life. So how has that made the difference? I mean, that's a terrific and easy takeaway strategy for all of our listeners. What should we know about that?
Well, taking an interest. My daughter loves horses. My wife's a veterinarian, but she's not that into horses. And
Mm-hmm.
my son was playing lacrosse, but he was also really interested in BMX bicycles and doing tricks and all these different things. And then
Mm-hmm.
later on, obviously building engines and whatnot. And so my wife and I would alternate. If my son was doing an event one weekend here and my daughter's over here, we would alternate back and forth. And I liken going to a horse show
Sure.
to watching paint dry. Like it is the worst. My daughter was so excited that I was there.
Mm-hmm.
And today, and my son too, my daughter today is one of my best friends. She's off in veterinary medical school like her mom. I don't see her hardly ever,
Mm-hmm.
but she'll call me and ask if we can go do something together. And it's just so special. And our son is the same way. Unfortunately, we live in Spokane. He lives in Indianapolis working on a race team. So what are we doing now? We're getting passes to all the events or tickets to all the events that we can. And we're
Uh-huh.
traveling and seeing him at the races. I think those things kept our family together. Taking an interest with what my wife likes. I hate shopping. I
Uh-huh.
hate shopping, but I'll go along and we'll walk through different stores and whatnot. And oftentimes I'll say, hey, I'll meet you outside. I'm just going to go out and watch people. But taking that time and taking an interest is really important. I want to step back here for a second. You
Mm-hmm.
talked about something I said about my family being my most important client. And I want to put this out there is I had somebody really angry challenge me on your family's not a client. And I said, you're exactly right. And one of the reasons I put that in there was the shock and awe factor of saying that, do you treat them as good as your best client?
Yeah.
But how many times, if you're sitting with your best client, would you answer the phone in front of them or answer a
Exactly.
text message? That's
Exactly.
my point. That's the point
Mm-hmm.
of saying that.
Or
So,
you're with a prospective client or even a client, you're taking an active interest. So how are things? Tell me about your family, what's been going on in your world.
yeah,
And it's all too easy to ignore the people around us. The most important business, the family business. I'm still going to say it's a client. I hear what you say, but I
yeah.
think the analogy is spot on. And Patrick, let me ask you this before we start wrapping up. I know you also do coaching and
Mm-hmm,
you're out there
mm-hmm.
making a difference, paying it forward, working with successful individuals. It would be great, almost like a Jekyll and Hyde kind of approach here. Pareto's Law. 20% of the actions that we take are likely causing 80% of the outcomes in our life. And no judgment on those outcomes. They may be what we call positive, they may be called negative. But for your clients, your coaching clients that are having some challenges, is
Mm-hmm.
there a typical, yeah, sure, most of my coaching clients are getting into challenges when they're doing these top one, two, or three things. What would that be of what you're seeing?
Well, I challenge people on the fact that number one challenge I see a lot
Mm-hmm.
of the people I work with is the fact that are you really spending the effort working when you say you're at work? Are you scrolling through Facebook or Instagram or
Sure.
whatever social media is there?
Mm-hmm.
And are you really putting the focus on work when you say you're there? And then the second part is, I saw this as we started coming out of COVID, is the lack of interaction with other people. And some young guys in our office we meet every month, and they're going out after work,
Mm-hmm.
going to the bar
Sure.
because they didn't have any time together. And I'm saying, now, time out. How frequently are you doing this? Has this kind of reintroduction to society created an issue where you
Mm-hmm.
missed your friends so much. You're starting to go down this path of, I don't want to go home because I've been at home for the last 2 years. Those are some of the bigger items that I
Mm-hmm.
am running into. I think the work expanding to just fill up the time has really become more and more of an issue. My business partner, he has 3 kids, and I commend that guy as
Mm-hmm.
far as he gets a phone call
Mm-hmm.
that he needs to go pick his son up from daycare or whatever.
Yeah.
He's on it. And
Terrific.
other people just don't. I see him going to the bar. I see him
Mm-hmm.
going to the gym. I got my pilot's license this last year. Finally, I've been
Well,
working on it for years and
congratulations.
years and years. Thank you. It took forever. But when I did that, I promised my wife it wasn't going to take time from her. I took that time away from work. And what did it cost me? It cost me extra income or whatnot that I could have gotten at work. But I think going back to your question of one of those big challenges coming out of COVID is making sure that we are going back and we are focusing on our family. That's something I've seen quite a bit lately.
Some sage advice coming out of there in terms of what to do and what not to do. And I like how you're saying, hey, if you're going to do something for yourself, take it out of your schedule, not your family schedule, your kid's schedule, your spouse's schedule. And
Yeah.
I'll throw a stat out there, Patrick. We had a management consultant on the podcast, and don't hold me to the exact number, but I'm not far off. And what they would do is for leaders, and all of our listeners in the Deep Wealth community, they're leaders in their own right, they would shadow them and time track to the second what they were doing. They said that when they added things up of how much actual productive, strategic, useful time the average leader is spending, I fell off my chair during the podcast. It's single digits. I want to say it's 7 minutes or 9 minutes in an entire day of what's
Wow.
going on. Now, granted,
Wow.
leaders, we have people calling out to us and wanting our
Oh, yeah.
time, and it's not always our own, but it just goes to show, to your point, how are
Mhm.
we spending our time?
Yeah.
Are we wasting our time on non-productive things or things we just shouldn't be doing at all that we could put either for ourselves or for our family? So love where you're going with that. Patrick, we're at the point in the podcast, we're going to start wrapping things up.
Sure.
And I'm privileged to ask this question for every single guest, you included. And
Hmm.
here it is. Let me set it up for you. Think of the movie Back to the Future. In the movie, you have that magical DeLorean car that will take you to any point in time. So here's a fun part, Patrick. Imagine now is tomorrow morning, you look outside your window. Not only is the DeLorean car there, the door is open and it's waiting for you to hop on in. So you hop into the car and you're going to go back to any point in your life. Patrick, as a young child, a teenager, whatever point in time it would be, what are you telling your younger self in terms of, hey, Patrick, here's some life lessons or some wisdom, or do this, but don't do that? What would that sound like?
Ooh, that is a tough question. I like it. I like it. And I'm going to come back to you with a question of my own. I would probably go back all the way to when I was going into college. And the reason is I had been injured pretty badly playing football and wrestling in high school and went through significant surgeries and rehabilitation. And so I thought that I really wanted to get into sports medicine. And my dad was all about me getting into sports medicine and being on the football field and working on football players and stuff. And I quickly realized that was not what I wanted to do. I couldn't work on people that were hurt because it just brought too much back into me. And I didn't spend any time thinking about what is it that I really want to do? What is my unique ability? What do I really want to do? And so I went into college, got a degree in economics, went to work for a big corporate company. Going back, I really wish that somebody would have steered me in a direction of doing what you're passionate about. How can you be
Uh-huh.
passionate about economics? I'm not dissing anybody that's an
Right.
economist, but it wasn't my passion. My
Uh-huh.
passion's helping people. And I wish I would have taken that route. Now, I wouldn't have the kids I have, probably wouldn't have the spouse I
Mm-hmm.
have had I done that.
Mm-hmm.
But if I was going to do it over again, I would have really followed my passion. And one of the things that I would challenge people who are listening is, are you doing what you're really passionate about, or are you
Mm-hmm.
doing it because you can make a lot of money? We only go around this planet, this thing one time, and do what really drives you, you're
Mm-hmm.
passionate about. And yeah, I would say do that. I ask that same question, but in the reverse. What I ask is, if Jeffrey, you and I are sitting here 3 years from today having the same conversation, what has to happen over that period of time for you to feel like those 3 years were just like amazing?
Great question as
Yeah.
well, to get people to think and put their mindset in the right place.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Patrick, we're going to have this in the show notes for our listeners, so it'll be a point and click. It can't get any easier. Again, we'll have the link for your book there. If
Mhm.
someone wants to reach you online, what would be the best place for them to do that?
Yeah. So PNP strategies,
Mm-hmm.
PNP stands for progress, not perfection.
Mm-hmm.
pnpstrategies.com is my website, or they can email me at pnpstrategies@outlook.com.
Terrific. And again, for our listeners, pick up the book, The Family Business Balancing Act, An Entrepreneur's Guide to Being a Family Man. Links are in the show notes for you. And Patrick, as we wrap this up, a heartfelt thank you for your wisdom, your insights, and your stories, and most importantly, for paying it forward. And as we like to say here on the Deep Wealth Podcast, as we wrap it up, please continue to stay healthy and safe.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
The Deep Wealth experience was definitely a game changer for me.
This course is one of the best investments you will ever make, because you will get an ROI of 100 times that. Anybody who doesn't go through it will lose millions.
If you don't have time for this program, you'll never have time for a successful liquidity.
I mean, it was the best value of any business course I've ever taken. The money was very well spent.
Compared to when we first began, today I feel better prepared, but in some respects, maybe less prepared, not because of the course, but because the course brought to light so many things that I thought we were on top of that we need to fix.
I 100% believe there's never a great time for a business owner to allocate extra hours into his or her week or day. So it's an investment that will yield results today. I thought I will reap the benefit of this program in 3 to 5 years down the road. But as soon as I stepped forward into the program, my mind changed immediately.
There was so much value in the experience that the time I invested paid back so much for the energy that was expended.
The Deep Wealth experience compared to other programs is the top. What we learned is very practical. Sometimes you learn stuff that is great to learn, but you never use it. The stuff we learned from Deep Wealth experience, I believe is going to benefit us both.
I've done an executive MBA. I've worked for billion-dollar companies before. I've worked for smaller companies before I started my business. I've been running my business successfully now for getting close to a decade. We're on a growth trajectory. Reflecting back on the Deep Wealth, I knew less than 10% what I know now. Maybe close to 1% even.
Hands down, the best program in which I've ever participated. And we've done a lot of different things over the years. We've been in other mastermind groups, gone to many seminars, workshops, conferences, retreats, read books. This was so different. I haven't had an experience that's anything close to this in all the years that we've been at this. It's 5-star, A+.
I would highly recommend it to any super busy business owner out there. And Deep Wealth is an accurate name for it. This program leads to deeper wealth and happier wealth, not just deeper wealth. I don't think there's a dollar value that could be associated with such an experience and knowledge that could be applied today and forever.
Are you leaving millions on the table? Please visit www.deepwealth.com/success to learn more. If you're not on my email list, you'll want to be. Sign up at www.deepwealth.com/podcast. And if you enjoyed this episode, if it added value, if you walked away with some new insights and strategies, please leave a review on your favorite podcast channel. Reviews help us reach new listeners, grow the show, and continue to create content that you'll enjoy. And as we wrap up this episode, as always, please stay healthy and safe.